Hello, today is Tuesday, August 18th, 2015, and I am your host, Sue Brown, and welcome to Info2rail, your freight train to modern media. How y'all doing today? Well, here in Canandaigua, New York, we kind of had a few really scorching days, and today's just an overcast day, but that mugginess is high and crazy. I want to welcome you all to our show, and we have a extremely great show for you today. We're very fortunate to have author, lecturer, filmmaker, you guessed it, L.A.Marzulli with us again. It's going to be a great interview, you guys. First, we're going to take a little glimpse into the missing persons files. The first one we have is Lily Ann Tyser Miller, age 12, was last seen in Muscatine, Iowa on August 15th, 2015. So that one's just a recent one. She's 4 foot 11 inches tall. She weighs 75 pounds, has short blonde hair and blue eyes. She may be wearing bright blue Nike tennis shoes with pink swoosh and carrying a black JanSport backpack. Anyone with any information, you can go on our Info2rail Google sites, and on there it has a picture of her. And it also has the same description I just read to you. So if you guys want to go on there and check these out so you can have a picture and stuff, we really got to be looking out for these people, you guys. These are somebody's children that are missing. If you have any information on her, you can call the police department at 563-263-6055 or call your local 911. The second one here is a Sabrina Brown. Age 16, was last seen in Burlington, Iowa on November 15th, 2014. Sabrina is 5 foot 3 inches tall. She weighs 125 pounds. She has dark brown hair, hazel eyes, a small infinity symbol carved above one of her ankles, and pierced ears. She was last seen wearing white pajama pants with a Mickey Mouse faces all over it, a blue, black, and green plaid men's jacket, and a black Vans tennis shoes with black shoelaces. She has brown plastic frame glasses. Come on, guys. Anybody with any information on this and her whereabouts, please contact the Burlington, Iowa Police Department at 319-753-8366 or dial your local 911. As I tell you guys every week, this is very important to me, and it's something that means a lot to me to get this out to you guys. You know, as I said a few minutes ago, this is somebody else's child, and the adults that are missing are somebody else's children, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers. And you know what? If it was your own, you would want everybody's help to bring either bring them back alive or at least have closure on where they are and what's going on. So please, look around. Okay, stay tuned. We're going to go and take a short break right now. And when we get back, we are going to have L.A.Marzulli with us. Stay tuned. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back with L.A.Marzulli. L.A.Marzulli is the author of the Nephilim Trilogy. The Nephilim Trilogy made the CBS bestsellers list and continues to thrill readers a decade after the first book in his series was published. Marzulli received an honorary doctorate from Pacific International University for his work on the Nephilim Trilogy. Marzulli is also the author of the nonfiction work Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural. The book packs a hard-hitting expose of how the current political landscape may bring about ancient biblical prophecies, which then may trigger supernatural events that are foretold in the book of Daniel and Revelation. His latest offering, The Alien Interview, features 17 personal, intense interviews with people who have been directly involved with the UFO phenomena. The book was written for the skeptic with various worldviews presented as to what his phenomena may be. He was also teamed up with the film producer Richard Shaw to create the Watchers DVD series. Marzulli has lectured on his exhaustive research in conferences and churches, as well as made appearances and interviews on numerous national radio shows and television programs. And might I tell you before we start this, that Marzulli is working on Watchers 9, so get ready. Hello, LA, and welcome to Info2rail, and thank you for coming back with us and being on the show again.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
Well, there's a new topic coming up all over the place, and that's the black-eyed children.
Hmm.
So I wanted to talk with you and see what your views are on these black-eyed children.
Well, we actually interviewed someone on this quite a while ago in Watchers Five. David Weberly wrote a book called Black Eyed Kids, and he was sort of the go-to person to discuss the Black Eyed Kids, and which was incredible because we sat down with him. I read his book. We sat down with him, and it's sort of um, what's the word I'm looking for? Serendipitously, that's a mouthful. Somewhat serendipitously, a friend of ours, a good friend of ours, Terry Tilton, who's been involved on the sort of the periphery of the Watchers film, which we've got 8 that have been produced, and we're working on 9. Had this frantic email from a friend who had an encounter with a black-eyed kid, and of course, what was really even more serendipitous about this person was going to be in Los Angeles. And so we got a hold of her, we interviewed her, and in the film, the way the co-producer and my business partner, Richard Shaw, the way he edited it, the way he cut the film, he bounced back between Leah, who was the woman who had the encounter, and told it on camera, had no black-eyed kid dog in the hunt, as it were, didn't know anything about it, was just like, a neophyte in all this stuff, but had an encounter and was chilled to the bone. And David Weberly, the author of the book, The Black-Eyed Kids. So it was incredible the way he cut back and forth between them. Or I'm interviewing David, and he's just casually telling us about the way they appear, the way they show up, what happens, the fear of it that they induce in people. And then, of course, Leah, who actually had an encounter, and this is the first time she's on camera telling her story to anybody about it, which was sort of a Watchers exclusive. And what's amazing about this, and her encounter was very typical of others. She was out for a run. She was in a place where she had run many times before. It was a quiet neighborhood. She had never seen any children in this neighborhood before at all. Okay, so that's the first thing that's sort of interesting, the first dynamic. And as she's running, she sees this child like a block ahead, just standing on the corner with his head down. And the kid, the first thing she thinks is, gee, he's dressed funny. And we've heard this from other accounts, and David Weberly has basically echoed the same thoughts, that when people encounter these so-called children, one of the first things that they notice is the kids are dressed funny. They're not dressed poorly. They're not dressed in rags. They just are dressed funny. They look different. They're not clothes that you would see, let's say, in 2015, something like that. Okay, that's the first thing these kids notice. So she runs up, and look, I'm a jogger. I just got back from a run, in fact, and when we come up to people, there's just sort of like an unwritten rule. It's like, you nod your head, you say good morning or good afternoon or whatever. You kind of wave or give a thumbs up. There's some gesture that runners will use just to acknowledge the other person, and being kind of friendly. And Leah was no different. She would smile and say good morning or good afternoon to the people that she was passing. And as she ran up to the child, the kid lifted his head up, and she was terrified because she had eye-to-eye contact. She was less than 3 or 4 feet away from the kid, eye-to-eye contact, and the kid had no whites in the eyes. In other words, the child's eyes were all black. And she said the fear was so visceral, so primal in her, that it was fight or flight, and fight never came in. It was immediately get out of here as fast as you can. And she ran without looking back, because I asked her, I said, well, did you look back to see if the kid vanished? She said, no, I was too terrified. I ran as fast as I could away from the scene. And when she had to go back the same way, and she detoured around the scene, that's how terrified, just this one brief encounter with a kid, that appeared, how old? 10, 11, 12 years old. And she's terrified. So something else is going on here. Now, I interviewed a kid who was 16 years old who had an encounter with a black-eyed kid. And that story is I'll tell you that one. And, of course, we got David Weberly's encounters. This 16-year-old was in a house in suburbia where the houses were a good distance away. They weren't packed together. And there was like an acre or two of space for each house. So this was like more like small little mini estates, and it was all open ground. So you could see, like, the front of your lawn to get the picture. Not a lot of trees around, not a lot of places for people to hide or run to or whatever. And he's babysitting his 12-year-old sister, 11-year-old sister, or maybe she's even younger than that. But he's babysitting his sister, and all of a sudden he's watching TV and he's on the internet at the same time, like most 16-year-olds do today. And the electricity the lights begin to flicker. The TV goes out. The internet goes down. He's going, what's going on? Then he hears a knock on the door. And this is all very unsettling to him. And he goes there, and there's this kid that's standing there. And it's like 9 o'clock at night. And the 16-year-old goes, well, what do you want? And the kid lifts up his head, and then he sees, I'm getting an echo, by the way. He sees the black eyes. And he's immediately freaked out by this. He slams the door and locks it and runs up the stairs to check on his sister. Finds that she's okay, looks out the window, the kid is gone, goes back down, opens the door, looks around, there's absolutely no trace of the kid. Now, I called this guy. His father contacted me, and I spoke with him like just a few days after the event. He was definitely traumatized by it. He had trouble discussing it. We prayed at the end of our conversation. He also told me his mom had been dabbling with a Ouija board, which can be a springboard into all this kind of so-called demonic activity, which is what I believe it is. We prayed and moved on from there. But that just gives you an idea of some of the stuff about the black-eyed kids.
Where do you believe that they fit into the Bible?
Well, that's a really good question, but I believe that and this takes a minute to sort of talk about that when the Bible talks about in Genesis 3, it says specifically that the seed of the serpent will be at enmity, at war with the seed of the woman. That's from Genesis 3. So we know that there's going to be a war between them, and it's a seed war. And the word is actually what we get our word sperm from. I mean, it's a seed war. That's what we're talking about. The offspring of the serpent. And when I asked Chuck Missler, who I consider a mentor in some ways, and I cut my teeth prophetically on Chuck Missler's books and teachings and everything else, and along with Dr. I.D.E. Thomas and Chuck Smith. I mean, those are and other people. I mean, Southwest Radio Church, Noah Hutchings is another guy that I listen to and every day. But anyway, Chuck would say that the fallen cherub, Satan, is outnumbered 2-1. He's building an army. And in Genesis 3, we get the idea. We get the first view of what's going on. The first part, if we don't understand Genesis 3, which is in the beginning of the biblical narrative, then we really, in my opinion, have no idea what's going on through the rest of the biblical narrative, because it's a seed war between two kingdoms, between the fallen cherub, Satan's kingdom, and the kingdom of the Most High God. That's what's going on. My book, The Cosmic Chess Match, which is now in its 9th printing, by the way, gets into that in great detail and explores all that. If we don't understand what's happening, then when we jump to modernity and the black-eyed kids, we don't understand what it is we're looking at. These entities, these so-called black-eyed kids, first of all, they look like children, but they're not children. And I asked David Weberly this, and Weberly agreed with me that they're far older than how they appear. They appear as children, but they're far older than that. And something has happened, and they've never grown up, as it were. But they're much, much older, and David and I concurred on this. And we believe it's part of a breeding program from an outside source, literally an extraterrestrial source. Now, extraterrestrial just means that it's off planet. That's what that means. And I'm not talking about Sirius or the Pleiades or anything else. I'm talking about interdimensional entities, which we read about in Genesis 3, which of course is the fallen cherub, i.e. Satan, is trying to create man in his own image. He's trying to build an army. He's trying to build some sort of a hybrid entity. And that's what we think the black-eyed kids are. Can I prove that? No, I can't. But that's conjecture on my part, and I'll freely admit that. But I mean, is there another? I mean, the only other alternative is there's some kind of hybrid extraterrestrial children from the Pleiades. That's it. We're saying no. These are not the offspring of ET. These are the offspring of the fallen cherub. What's interesting here is that anyone who encounters these entities, and I mean anyone who encounters these entities, are always filled with fear. There's never anything good about it.
So the fear that they're feeling when they encounter these is not just a visual thing. It's something they're feeling within, something that's not just looking at them, but they have the feeling inside that it's a bad thing.
Well, it's more of terror. I mean, it's not even a feeling. I mean, it's people who encounter these entities are absolutely terrified. I mean, they really are. They are absolutely terrified of what they're looking at. I mean, there's no equivocation. Once they see the eyes. I mean, we've talked to people, people that have been special ops forces and everything else. I mean, these are not a bunch of wimps, ex-military guys. I mean, my gosh. And here they are looking at this kid. And we actually dramatized this in Watchers 5. This guy, ex-military, is in a pickup truck riding across Texas. And he goes to relieve himself because he's drinking a lot of coffee. He comes back to the cab in the middle of nowhere, Sue. Think about it. In the middle of nowhere. And there's a black-eyed kid standing next to the truck. And the kid says, "Let me in. We'll go for a short ride." And the guy is just freaked out, and he goes, "No way, kid!" And he gets in the truck and steps on the accelerator and hightails it out of there. Well, a couple miles down the road, he starts to question his own behavior, going like, "Why was I so afraid?" And he circles back and see if the kid was there. The kid wasn't there. No sign of the kid. There's not a house for miles around. So it's like, we hear about this. Look, it's not like I get an email every week from somebody who's had an encounter with a black-eyed kid. That's not what we're saying. But we hear more and more of this type of encounter, and frankly, it's very, very unnerving.
That's what I've noticed. Just looking on the internet, there's constantly, it seems like they're popping up left and right, all these new encounters.
Yes.
And a lot of them are right at people's front doors. And it's
Yep.
like 7 o'clock at night, and a child will knock on the door and say, "Let me in." They don't ask to be let in. They just simply state, "Let me in."
Yeah, and that's incredibly unnerving. They'll say things like, "Let us in. We need to make a phone call. This won't take long. Is it food time yet?" David Weberly, that's one of his more chilling one-liners. Is it food time yet? I mean, that's just no one speaks like that. Is it food time yet? I mean, that's just wacky. So I mean, look, this stuff is unnerving, and in my opinion, it's it's very, very alarming.
I guess my question is, what would happen if somebody let them in?
Well, that's actually happened. David Weberly talked to us about that, and Sue, that was a really bad circumstance. This woman was living in a small town, and she had like a 9 or 10-year-old in the back of a minivan. She pulls into a convenience store, a small town, left the keys in the car, left the kid in the car. We're just going in for like a gallon of milk or something. Small town, everybody knows everybody else. It's not like, she's doing anything that would jeopardize the kid in any way. It's a small town, small little convenience store, hole in the wall type of thing. Everybody knows everybody else. And she goes in, gets the milk. She's gone a couple of minutes, right? Gets back in the car and looks in the rearview mirror. And her son's there, but to her absolute horror, there's a kid next to her son, and that kid has black eyes. And she gets out of the van, opens the side door, grabs her son, runs in. She's frantic, terrified. Runs in, calls the police, calls her husband. She's absolutely freaked out. The police get there. There's nobody in the van. How's that possible? Husband arrives. She won't get in the van again. The husband takes the van. He goes down the road and completely gets into a horrible automobile accident. The van is totaled. He escapes barely with his life, is hospitalized. The kid, the son, who had the encounter with the black-eyed kid, comes down with this really weird sickness that seems to travel. Every time the doctors figure out they know what it is, it morphs into something else. This goes on for 6 months, and the kid is at death's door. Finally, these people were Christians. The church gets together and prays, and they break what has been happening. They break the demonic link, and the kid recovers.
That's creepy.
That's the creepiest, most sobering story I've ever heard with as far as a black-eyed kid's encounter.
Well, that's what I always wondered. I mean, if a kid came to my door, my first instinct would be, of course, they need help, and I should help them. And there's so many people in this world who are kind-hearted like that. So that would be, I guess, with the facts out there, and that's, I want to get the facts out to the listeners and stuff, so to watch for this stuff. But somebody who doesn't know and would let them in, just, they're looking at their own demise, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, Sue. It's most people never do that. Most people are totally freaked out by what they see. They're terrified. The fight or flight idea comes into them, and they basically run for their lives, slam the door, step on the accelerator, whatever it takes to get out of there. That's what most people do.
Well, what I had wondered, and I had kind of fought with the theory in my head, was if these black-eyed children were actually being created as, hybrids.
Well, that's exactly what we think they are. That goes back to the Genesis 3 account. We think that this is part of the breeding program. They're hybrid entities which are stunted. They don't come to maturity. That's why they look like kids but are many years older.
Well, I guess my thought in that was maybe they were actually hybriding them in like Area 51 or something. So maybe it was like a government program.
I don't know about that. Can I ask you something? Can we take a quick short break for about 2 minutes? Is that okay?
Sure.
Great. I'll be right back.
Okay, guys, we're back. I don't know. I guess I wonder what we can do to kind of protect ourselves from these black-eyed children so that, we don't have a problem as we did, with this poor lady who just went inside and came back out, and look what, kind of upside down life she ended up with.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was, she actually let one in, or her son let one in, and that started all the problem.
Now, is this true that they cannot enter without permission?
It seems to be that. Yes. In other words, and what's interesting about this smacks of the demonic. In other words, there are just certain protocols in the spiritual dimension that these entities have to adhere to. I mean, they have to. They just can't. In other words, an entity just can't come in and possess a person. They have to be invited. They have to be asked in. They have to have permission. They do. There needs to be an open doorway. Now, that open doorway can happen in a myriad of ways. I mean, I'll tell you just one story. And I got an email from a guy that wants to experiment with DMT, ayahuasca. And I told him, I said, well, here's the deal. Shamans have been using ayahuasca for centuries. And the question is, where does the knowledge to mix these plants come from? Because it's a very complex formula to make ayahuasca, which they then drink and are catapulted into what I call the lower astral. That knowledge, the Book of Enoch, which is really interesting, tells us that the cutting of roots was given to mankind by a fallen angel. Just like the first abortion, the killing of the fetus in the womb, was given by a fallen angel. Most people don't know that. That's where it comes from. And the shamans who take this stuff are catapulted into the lower astral. And look, I've gone on reservations and I've spoken to medicine men or men that were studying to be medicine men and became Christian pastors. And they've told me some very harrowing accounts of how as they started getting closer to graduation, as it were, there were things that they had to do that they didn't want to do. And that's why they turned back and never went through with it. Because you've got to give yourself up to a familiar spirit. And of course, we're told in the Bible, the guidebook of the supernatural, that we shouldn't do that because that person is taking in something which is basically demonic, which is satanic in origin, which will give knowledge and power, but at what cost, at what price?
Well, I mean, I understand that it's more in certain places than other places that these black-eyed children are showing up. But does this seem that it's going to spread nationwide? Is that something that seems like that's what's going to happen?
I don't think it's going to be like a nationwide, phenomena. I don't think that's what's going to happen. But I mean, anything's possible. Look, the fact that we're in 2015 and we're even discussing stuff like this is bizarre. That in itself is bizarre. I mean, black-eyed kids 20 years ago, maybe a couple of people had reports, but not like now. See, now it's out in the mainstream. And I find that very interesting. 25 years ago, the abduction phenomenon, nobody knew about it. Nobody knew about it, or very few people knew about it, I should say. I mean, yeah, there were people that are studying it, John Mack and Dr. David Jacobs, fine. But the public, didn't know about it. The little grays that, you use the icon for, on your logo, Info2rail. I'm looking right at it. How many people knew about the grays with the big black eyes 25 years ago? A handful. There were people that were studying it, but not like it is today. Not like we've been enculturated with it. It's everywhere. Even last year's Super Bowl. Think about it. There's a rock band playing. All of a sudden, the mothership hovers over, and all these guys are picked up. They're abducted. That's what they're showing at the Super Bowl. And then the UFO lands and becomes the stadium, and then Katy Perry comes riding out on a lion. A woman rides a beast. The imagery is extremely deliberate. What we witnessed, in my opinion, was a blatant occult ceremony.
Wow.
Yeah.
It just seems like I see what you're saying in this is, before it actually became public knowledge on the internet, and now it's everywhere. People are coming forward left and right with abductions and visitations from,
Sure.
I didn't know too much about this as a child. I'm only 44 years old, and when I was a kid, this wasn't something that was huge. But it almost seems to me like it's being put in front of our face for a reason, and I guess I wonder what they're what we're being set up for.
Well, in my opinion, what we're being set up for is a coming great deception. I've written about this and talked about it incessantly, and basically will do so again here in sort of a thumbnail sketch of it. Darwinism presents a theory which is both embraced in the academic community and the scientific community. And Ben Stein's groundbreaking movie, Expelled, should be a must-see because he deals with this. He sits down with Richard Dawkins and just holds Dawkins' feet to the fire as only Stein can and says, Richard, where did the first self-replicating molecule come from? And Dawkins has no answer for that. So he has no idea where life began, nor does anyone else. And Dawkins begins this a story because Stein throws him a lifeline and says, well, how do you think it could have happened? And Dawkins is relieved by that. Well, I suppose it could have happened in a manner similar to this. Or he says something very, very close to what I just said. And Dawkins goes on and he starts that in another race, or a race of extraterrestrials in another galaxy far, far away, I'm sort of tongue-in-cheek here, who themselves would have risen to a very high form of civilization through some sort of Darwinian process, created life as we know it, and then seeded it here. Seeded it through the universe, called panspermia. That's what that's called. It arrived here on Earth because Earth was a fertile ground for life, and voila, creation begins. And of course, what's silly about all this is, well, where does water come from? Where does any of this come from? I mean, when we go back and we look at the deoxyribonucleic acid, the molecular structure of DNA, we're astounded because the Bible tells us that everything reproduces according to its kind. And the DNA reproduces, in other words, the DNA of two penguins is going to produce penguins. They're not going to produce kangaroos. It's not going to happen. No matter how many times you try, that DNA, let me move this out of here, that DNA will only produce penguins. It's never going to produce a kangaroo, which goes back and points back to the veracity of the biblical narrative that tells us, sorry about that,
That's okay.
that everything reproduces according to its kind. Well, in the academia and the scientific community, Darwinism is held sacrosanct. Darwinism is the operating paradigm. And leading Darwinists like Richard Dawkins espouse the idea that somehow we were seeded here, panspermia. So he has no idea how life began. But somehow, over billions and millions of years, evolution did what it did, and voila, here we are. So this creates an intellectual vacuum in most people. Well, where did we come from? In fact, the movie Prometheus, released a few years back, delves into this nagging. Look, the co-discoverer of DNA, Watson and Crick. Crick was a vexed man. Crick stated, and I quote this in my presentations, no matter how many millions of years or billions of years of prebiotic sop that you've got, there's no way that you're just going to form just one DNA strand of protein, or one DNA strand that would create a protein. There's no way that that's just going to somehow spring into existence. So because he didn't believe in God, he looked to the extraterrestrial. The entire planet, Sue, the entire planet, for the most part, the planet is run, specifically I'm singling out the university system and academia and the scientific community, runs on Darwinism. That's the paradigm that those people who are working in that field, and I'm painting with a broad brush here, I'll admit that, but the majority of the people working in those fields embrace and hold to a Darwinian paradigm. Thus, they reject the biblical narrative, they reject the supernatural, they reject a creator, or that a creator or intelligent design could have created life as we know it. They point to the extraterrestrial. This is the coming great deception. When they, the ET, extraterrestrials, show up, they will say that ET, that they created all life on this planet, they genetically manipulated early man, they started the world's religions and world civilizations. Now, at this critical juncture in human history, they are back to usher mankind into a golden age, an era of peace and prosperity. And this is exactly what the channelers are saying. This is what the ET people are saying. This is what Georgios Tsoukalos and the alien folks, ancient alien crowd, this is what they're saying. They're all awaiting the revealing of the so-called extraterrestrial presence. This will cause, when it happens, when we actually see the revealing of the so-called extraterrestrial presence, this will cause what I call the apostasia, or the apostasy, the great falling away. In other words, many people who embrace a Christian belief system will abandon their Christian belief system and believe the lie, which is all prophetic, by the way, and found in the second Thessalonian passage. The apostasia, I always have trouble pronouncing it the correct way. Thank you, Doug Hamp. The apostasia, the apostasy. That's what the word says. And there are people who believe that points to the rapture of the church. I don't believe that. I don't hold to that view. I believe it points to what the word says, which is apostasy, the apostasia. It's the apostasia, the great falling away. It's a deliberate event that begs the question, what event would cause that? And there's plenty of room for a rapture to happen after we see that. But here's the thing. We hold on to all these things loosely. I'm not dogmatic about them. I mean, I'm looking at, here we are in 2015 in August. There's rumblings throughout the financial world of a global reset in the currency. The Chinese have devaluated the yuan twice now. That's deliberate. Remember that the U.S. dollar is controlled by not our government. The Federal Reserve has nothing to do with our government. And we are trillions of dollars in debt, $19 trillion to debt, and it's with no end in spending in sight. And the weasels in Congress won't do anything about it. And so here we are. Many of us are looking at this and are wondering if we are going to see some sort of a global currency reset. The Shemitah year, which Jonathan Cahn has been talking about, happens this year. The last time we saw that was 2008, where the stock market plunged 777 points. That's the deliberate. Very, very, that's a marker to me, in one day. That was 7 years ago at the last Shemitah. And this year, this is this could be, it could have dire consequences with America, and I'll tell you why. We've crossed the line, Sue. And you go back and we look at the Greek and Roman empires, the embracing of homosexual marriage is a line that we've crossed. And I believe that judgment is about to fall on America. There are over 1 billion abortions worldwide, 55 million abortions in this country, and shame on Planned Parenthood. I'm getting a little political here, but shame on Planned Parenthood for somehow trying to defend the indefensible position of taking live baby parts and selling them on the open market. That's insane. That's insane. Hitler would have loved it. Remember, when I say right out of a Nazi playbook, people go, well, L.A., what are you talking about? Go back and do your homework, folks, and read what happened in the concentration camps and the death camp. How after the corpses were gassed, they would bring in people who would pull the gold teeth out of the corpses. Okay? That's right out of a Nazi playbook. All right? Look what Mengele did, experimenting on twins while they were alive, doing horrific medical experiments. This is what I'm talking about. And this is how far down the rabbit hole we've gone. And I don't think there's any way out of this mess, quite frankly, Sue. And I realize that might be a very pessimistic view of the world, but I don't see it happening. I just see a laissez-faire attitude in most Americans. Donald Trump has certainly ruffled the status quo in the Republican Party, and bully for him. He's an outsider. I saw a clip with Rick Perry. It was just absolutely comical, with all due respect to Mr. Perry. But all he did was just mouth his little talking points. There was nothing from the heart. There was nothing there that would make me want to vote for this man. There was not a shred of realism. There was a man who had been coached and rehearsed in talking points. Whereas Donald Trump gets up there and he tells you what he's thinking and what's right from his heart. You may not agree with the guy. You may call him every name in the book, but he's telling you what he thinks. And it's so refreshing. And he's hit a nerve. He's a popularist. He's hit a nerve with the American people, and bully for him. Boy, are we off subject.
Well, that's okay. I see that Hillary Clinton is talking about running too, and I think, in my opinion, we're all in trouble. So
I would certainly agree. I mean, all we need to do is think of two words with Hillary: Benghazi. That's it. If it's anybody else, there'd be a major scandal, but the media is complacent and they don't talk about Benghazi. That ambassador was tortured and sodomized and brutally tortured for hours before they finally killed him. Are you kidding me? And we know now from the Navy SEALs, that they were deliberately told to stand down. And they could have gone in and they could have rescued those guys, but they were told to stand down. Where did the order come from? Benghazi, Hillary Clinton. Thank you, Hillary Clinton. And then we get the emails. This woman is as a corrupt politician, a career politician as you can possibly get. Please, folks, whatever you do, don't vote for Hillary. A vote for Hillary is the death knell of the American way of life, in my opinion.
Mine as well. I'm worried about it. We need somebody who, who runs that has a clue about what we need.
I agree.
And the scary part is when you get somebody who runs like that, they don't get any kind of recognition and nobody ever votes for them.
Well, it's just like Rand Paul. I like Rand Paul. I like Ted Cruz. I like both of those guys. I don't think Rand is electable. I think Cruz could be. Certainly Cruz could be. But somebody. The only person standing out there right now, in my opinion, to Obama, and to Boehner and McConnell, who are basically, you might as well just vote Democratic because Boehner and McConnell have folded. Chief Justice Roberts is completely folded. What does Obama have on these guys that they completely abandon conservative principles and go? I mean, Roberts voting for gay marriage. Or voting for Obama. Care. 5 people decide that gay marriage becomes the law of the land. I mean, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, this is how crazy this whole thing is. Boehner just laying down. And we control the House and the Senate, and it's business as usual, Sue. Nothing changes. It's business as usual. And that I find incredibly depressing.
Well, I think we need to get the people in Congress out of there and get a new
Yeah,
set of Congress
all
that
new people.
actually knows what they're doing.
Yep.
You know, it should be about us and what benefits us and what's good for us. And it doesn't seem that these people have any interest in what's good for the people anymore.
No, they don't. It's all they vote in legislation which is bad for the people, which is onerous for the people. Just look at the NSA spying on millions of Americans. Look at the way we're patted down at airports now, and yet TSA has never stopped one terrorist, at least that we know about. And the rules are different everywhere you go with TSA. So all it is just another layer of intrusion into our rights. Now the American government can hold anyone indefinitely. There goes the right of habeas corpus without even bringing charges against him. If you're a suspected terrorist, and as a Christian pastor, I can be viewed as a terrorist now, according to some legislation that I've read, because of my biblical worldview. The Obama administration apparently has labeled me a possible terrorist threat. Isn't that interesting? I guess I could be held in Guantanamo Bay or someplace else indefinitely. There goes the right of habeas corpus, which we fought the American Revolution for. And the whole influx of illegals, if you want to completely bring down a culture, this is the way you do it. You're bringing people who have no idea of what this country is about, and all they care about is a government handout and getting on Obama mess or getting their food stamps. And the rest of us, look, I made some money in 2013. We did really well. I basically took my hard-earned profit and handed it over to the government, so much so that I am now borrowing money to keep my business open and running. I'm not crying poor here, but I don't have the working capital that I did. We're paying back the loan. It's not like we're throwing it in the pipeline. But I gave my working capital to the United States government in taxes. That's how onerous it's gotten. That's how lame it has gotten. It is absolutely horrifically onerous for the small businessman. It is very, very difficult. There's a clip. It's on YouTube. It's a cartoon. It shows Ronald Reagan and all the presidents from our present era lecturing Obama on why his system doesn't work. And it's got Dick Nixon as a lemonade stand operator. And finally, Dick Nixon can't pay the taxes, and he closes his stand down, and he goes out of business. Folks, there are 92 million people in this country that are out of work. They try to tell us that unemployment's below 10%. It's nonsense. Unemployment's up around 42%, and the media is not doing its job, and you're being lied to. Unemployment is through the roof. And those of us who are employed and self-employed and are paying the taxes, there are more people on food stamps now than ever before. Who do you think's footing the bill for the food stamps? Those of us who are paying the taxes. And guess what? We're all getting a little sick and tired of it. We're all getting tired of welfare for these people that come over here illegally, the millions of people who come into this country illegally and then tax the system. The dirty little secret in California that people won't talk about are the $10 billion annually, because illegals tax the system, not only the welfare system, but the hospital and healthcare system in this country and the school system. And no one talks about that because you're a racist if you do. Baloney. Baloney. Let's turn the tables. Let's go to Mexico and demand healthcare and demand, we need welfare from the Mexican government and we need food stamps from the Mexican government. What's wrong with this picture? We'd be thrown in jail and deported in about 6 minutes. Are you kidding me? But in this country, we've got sanctuary cities, and we harbor these people. Bully for Trump. Bully for Trump. We need to deport these people, get them out of the country. We need to build a wall, and we need to revamp the immigration system so people don't have to jump through these ridiculous bureaucratic hoops to get in, but we can screen them, and there can be a process. Look, I can't just go to New Zealand. I can't just go live in Mexico. But somehow it's okay for everyone else to come here and just walk in and get on welfare and tax the school system and tax the healthcare system. My people came over here about 118 years ago, all right, from Italy. And they all came over through Ellis Island. I've seen the books. And they got educated. and they became citizens. And they did it the right way, the legal way. And they speak English, and they learned English. Italian was their first language, but they learned English and became fluent by it. Now it's like Pres Nueve for Espanol. I mean, this will break the country. You can't do this, Sue. You can't have two different cultures in a country. You can't do that. But, it's politically correct, and the press doesn't do their job. And, look, we're in a culture war. And you say stuff like this, and you're a racist, or you're a homophobe. Nonsense. Nonsense.
Well, I think that one of the things that bothers me the most is we're not too worried about our own people. We can go out and have two jobs and bust our butts to try to even make our
That's right.
we can't even make our mortgage, let alone feed our families after working two jobs.
That's right.
And this is crazy. We can't even afford to live anymore.
Yeah, we can't. And what most people don't understand that work at 9 to 5 for another company, people are laying off people because they can't afford the taxes. The tax system in this country is onerous. It's so over the top. As a small businessman, and I have no employees. I have people that I 1099 at the end of the year. They're private contractors, but they work for Spiral of Life for my company. But they're all independent contractors, and that's how it works. I mean. And at the end of the year, I 1099 everybody. Sue, I am taxed just for having my doors open. I pay the federal government $20,000 a year just for the privilege of keeping my doors open. Small business tax, bam, 20 grand.
Wow.
That's for a lot of businesses. That's their profit. That's their profit. That's their operating money for a small business. And that's what they're doing. Just like the Dick Nixon lemonade stand in the Reagan cartoon with Obama. Nixon can't run a lemonade stand, so guess what? George W. doesn't get to go to college. That's how it works. That's how it works. And we got another 18 months of this guy, and the Democrat and Obamacare and the onerous taxes, and everybody's going to have to pay a little more. I'm tired of paying a little more, and I'm tired of giving my nuts to the guy, my hard-earned money to the guy on welfare from the Middle East who comes into this country, hates this country, wants to jihad in this country, and I'm not making this stuff up. Just look at Major Hassan. And that's another hot button issue, where we're allowing immigrants from the Middle East, war-torn countries like Syria, who harbor terrorists. How do we know who these people are? We're allowing them into the country. Big, big, big mistake.
Well, something that seems funny to me is, we can't even go in another country if somebody has a DWI. But I'll tell you something, if they're terrorists, they're allowed in ours.
Exactly. There's no screening process. Obama let all those kids in. The feds are letting all these refugees from Syria in. How do we know who they are? I mean, this is it's madness, but it's not madness, Sue. It's calculated and it's deliberate. And it's done because they are trying to break America apart. It's nation against nation. It's black against white. It's Hispanic against black. It's immigrant. It's a race war. All this has happened under Obama's watch. That's how horrible it's gotten. This wasn't like this 15 years ago. And all this has been, incited. Is there police brutality? You bet. I get that. But, and there's some policemen who are bad policemen. I get that. But I think the majority of them aren't that way. I think the majority of them, are trying to uphold the law. But this is where we are. This is where we are. Meanwhile, in Syria, Assad has killed well over 250,000 people. And, here we are. Guantanamo Bay is still open. The Afghan war still rages on with $1 trillion opium harvest last year. Need I say more, Sue? $1 trillion. Who profits from that? Where does that money go? And on it goes. I mean, this is how far down the rabbit hole we are. I think Obama's a puppet. I think we're controlled by a very dark cabal of men and women who want a new world order. And any president since Kennedy has been part of that cabal, with the exception of Reagan. And the American people have been duped. The media is bought out. And I think we're looking at a global currency reset in the fall.
Where do you think we're at in the Bible right now? What part of Revelation do you think that we're in?
I don't think we're in the book of Revelation. I think we're in the birth pangs, Matthew 24. Watchers 9 is called The Days of Chaos. My new book coming out, which is over 400 pages, is called The Days of Chaos. And we track the signs that Yeshua warns us. Many will come in my name saying, I am the Messiah. That's the first one he says. Guess what? I mean, that's an insane comment to make 2,000 years ago. But we track this. In my book, you'll see it. Days of Chaos. Earthquakes, wars and rumors of war, famines, earthquakes in diverse places, troublesome times. Signs from the heavens, men fainting from fear from what is coming upon the earth. All this, Sue, is happening. These are the birth pangs. Giving birth to what? Giving birth to the tribulation period. That's where it's heading. That's where it's going. I find that sobering and very, very alarming.
Well, kind of what scares me a little bit is I've heard this through different people, just talking on the internet and stuff. And he I heard that Obama can sit another term if he can create, what's it called? Through the whole, martial law. If he can, put every state in martial law, I heard that he can sit another term. And that's a scary thought. I mean, if he goes that length just to sit another term, we're in a lot of trouble.
I would agree with that. I think the American people would riot in the streets. I think you'd have real serious problems if Obama tries to pull something like that. There's too many people know what's going on, and are I don't see that happening. I mean, I really don't. People thought the same thing about W when he was elected, that he would pull the same type of thing. The American people aren't stupid. See, that's where they tried to round up the guns over and over and over again, and everybody's going, no, you're not taking our gun. And most people don't understand what the Second Amendment's about. The Second Amendment is about to protect the citizens against a tyrannical government. It's not to go duck hunting with. It's not to get a gun so you can go kill a moose. That's not what it's about. It's about to arm the people in case the government becomes tyrannical. That's what the Second Amendment's about. And that's what we need to uphold. And the government already is practicing, in my opinion, soft tyranny. I mean, look at the tax laws. Look at the tax laws. Look at what the federal government has become so bloated, so much in control, that it's over the top. It's just over the top.
Well, I think that for me, for Revelations, we're in the sixth seal. The measure, seventh measure, wheat for a penny type thing is where I think we're at. That's in my opinion anyway.
Well, you know what? This is why we look at all this stuff, and we just look at it with a sort of a light touch, and we just go from there.
Well, I'm scared to death. I mean, I have 4 girls. What are they looking at for their future?
Well, I don't know.
It doesn't seem like they have any kind of a promising future. They can't work 2 jobs to make ends meet any more than I can right now.
Right.
So,
I get it.
I'm scared to death. It seems like what's coming is something that there's no possibility we're going to ever get through with any kind of easy life at all.
Well, here's something to think about. There's something that I've used. There's this saying that I came up with, and I've had it on the blog several times, and it's this: the only way out of this mess must be up. And it ties into a pre-tribulation position. In other words, we're told, behold, I tell you a mystery, the dead in Christ will rise first. And, the dead in Christ will rise first, and then those of us who are alive will be caught up and remain caught up to the Lord in the air and remain evermore with him. The bottom line is this, that when I say the only way out of this mess may be up, what I mean by that is that the rapture promises that we will be translated, will be, in a twinkling of an eye, will be changed, that our mortal body will put on immortality, that we will be raptured and into the air. We'll meet the risen Savior in the air. That's a controversial hot button subject. But Sue, we're not going to change this here. This thing is getting crazy on this planet. We're not going to fix this mess. Can't. Not going to fix it. Now, there can be pockets of good all through all this. Okay, I get all that. But the only way out of this mess may be up. And that's why I say what I say.
I agree with you. I don't see a way out of this either. Can you tell us about what's been going on with you since we talked last? Any new things that, any new discoveries, any new things that you've done? And
well, the new book, Days of Chaos, is coming out probably in September sometime. It's in the last stages of the editing process. It's actually at the typesetters being typeset, and it goes to the printer, and we'll start doing pre-sales on that, and we'll go from there.
And you said Watchers 9 is coming out as well?
Watchers 9 is coming out. There's a pre-sale on the website, www.L.A.Marzulli.net, and you can avail yourself of that. And there'll also be a pre-sale for Days of Chaos, the book.
I'm pretty excited. I love the Watcher series. I think that was fabulous, and I'm excited. I'm excited for both your book and Watchers 9, so I'll be definitely getting on there and getting myself a copy of each.
Well, thank you, Sue. I appreciate that.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on again. You are definitely, one of my favorite guests to have on here. Everybody thinks the world of you, and when I put it out there that you were coming back on, everybody said, "Oh, thank you. We love LA." So I want to thank.
That's encouraging to hear, and I appreciate it. And just thanks for the opportunity of having me on. It's great.
I have to tell you, one of their favorite lines that you say is, "Are you kidding me?" That's like that is something you're very well known for, and everybody just loves it when you say that.
Are you kidding me?
That's right. Everybody just gets a kick out of that. But you are absolutely great, and I just want to thank you for taking the time and tell you that we'll be definitely looking for your new material coming out, and be great to have you back on when you get some more new stuff.
Great. Thank you so much, Sue. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All righty, you too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Right, bye. All right, guys. That was fun. And a lot, I like it when I can get guests on here who get passionate about things. And that was definitely very interesting. And I learned a lot about a lot of things. The black-eyed children, it's definitely growing into a bigger thing. And we need to start watching what comes to our doors and what approaches us, when we're out and about. I mean, that woman, her son let that black-eyed child into that minivan, and look what happened to them. I mean, that could have been a lot worse had they not gotten together as a church and prayed for that little boy. That little boy could have lost his life. I mean, that was crazy. So we need to be aware of the fact that the black-eyed children do exist. It's not just a made-up thing that, for publicity. This is real stuff, and this stuff is really coming at us just as real as these alien encounters and abductions. Well, that's all we have time for today. We post all our shows on YouTube, and if you want to know more about our guests and upcoming shows, please visit our Info2rail webpage. Just Google Info2rail and click on our Google Sites page. All of our shows are on our YouTube page. I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for joining us here at Info2rail each and every week. Like I tell you guys every show, if it wasn't for the guests and you guys, the audience, the listeners, I wouldn't be able to do this. And I love what I do. And I love having these guests on. They're amazing. I can learn a lot from these guys, and I hope that you can too. I hope to see you here each and every week for great new guests and new topics. So thank you. May God bless you and keep you, and may His face shine upon you in these uncertain times. We'll see you soon.